Kumlenen, our Black Gemara. This is the Yevamos Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, Tuesday, Yud Aleph Nisan. The Gemara, we have a machlekes Rabbi Yechon and Reish Lakish. If someone gave chalitza or someone gave bia, the way we learn as Kafaya, if we gave chalitza bia to a woman who was pregnant, and at the time you did not know whether she would have a child or she wouldn't have a child. So the thing there is that, and turned out to be afterwards that she miscarried, so therefore she was a Yevama entitled to chalitza or entitled to Yibum. According to Rabbi Yechon, therefore the chalitza he gave at that time, or the bia gave at that time, validates or consummates the Yibum process. However, Reish Lakish says that if you gave it to her while she's a Muberis, it's not valid. And so the Gemara continues. What we also said is that even if there's a child, the child is not exempt. If there is a child, then obviously they're exempt from Yibum. That does not take place until the child's actually born, not while the child's inside the mother's womb. Comes along Rabbi Lazar, the halacha is going to be like Reish Lakish. So Amar Rabbi Lazar says, Efshir Isa Lahad Reish Lakish, in the middle of the page of Amavav Amud Aleph. Is it possible that we have Reish Lakish's din, that if you give chalitza to a woman who's pregnant, it turns out to be respectively that she miscarried, so therefore she's entitled to chalitza, that it's not valid. And the loy tanan lo b'masnisin, and there's no mishnah that alluding to that at all. Nofik, he went out, duck, and he investigated, duck, and he searched, and he eventually found it. Did not. We learned in a mishnah later on, and it goes as follows. A woman whose husband went overseas together with another wife, a co-wife. If he went on his own overseas, we don't have to be suspicious that maybe he got married again and there's a child somewhere, and therefore she cannot marry a brother-in-law. But he went with his wife at the time when he went with his wife, she was not pregnant. Uvo, and then later on they came, but they told her, your husband died. Now the question is, did his co-wife become pregnant and therefore she's forbidden to her brothers-in-law and she can marry anybody out in the marketplace? Or do we say that his wife also, that the co-wife didn't have any children and therefore she cannot marry anybody in the marketplace, and she must marry only a brother-in-law? So what do you do? It's a suffix. She should not marry anybody outside because maybe there was no child. There's a mitzvah yibum. Nor can she marry a brother-in-law because maybe there was no child. Maybe there was a child and therefore there is no mitzvah yibum. And we're learning right now there's no difference between yibum or chalitza. It's the same thing. And you don't do either chalitza or yibum ad shetate until she knows for a fact. You can verify the shema uberes hitzorasa. Could very well be that her co-wife is pregnant, so she does nothing until she finds out. Now, we understand why she shouldn't marry a brother-in-law because it's a suffix. Shema yehev labed kayom. Maybe the co-wife had a child and therefore she has no mitzvah yibum. So she's an eishes ach, and the brother-in-law marries her. They're committing a sin of karas. Makes sense. And they'll end up violating and transgressing and evading the Torah. What's wrong with chalitza? But if she turns out to be that there was no child, mitzvah yibum, she had chalitza, and if it turned out to be that there was a child and there's no need for it, no, so the chalitza just went through the motions. Nothing really happened. Now he's like this. We understand why if you should get chalitza during the 9 months that the husband was away, and then marry somebody else outside. We understand why you cannot rely on the chalitza to marry within the 9 months, because maybe it turns out to be that there was no child, the child was miscarried, and there was no child, it didn't reach a full term, and as a result of that, she has a mitzvah of yibum, and she has to wait to see what happens. Because we know that if there is a child, it's the child that is going to pater. We need to wait till the child actually comes out into the world. So therefore, you have to wait till maybe there's a child, and therefore, if the child, before she can marry anybody else, the chalitza is not what permits her to marry anybody else. It's the child, but a child is not permitting her to marry. You said before, I believe yesterday, only when he comes out into Avira Olam. So therefore, you have to wait. Understood. But why can't she take a chalitza straight away and then wait 9 months. And if nothing happens, she gets married then. Marry after the 9 months. If you hold that you permit, like Rabbi Yechon permitted to give chalitza in 9 months, why delay the chalitza till after 9 months? You can do the chalitza straight away, and then after 9 months, she can marry. If there was no child and the chalitza was effective, because in the midst of Yibum, the chalitza was effective, and there was a child, well, the child was born by now. It's 9 months already, and therefore he's free. She's free. Manushach. So it's a proof, like Reish Lakish, that you cannot give chalitza while the woman is pregnant. That's what Rabbi Elazar wants to say. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Elazar wants to say. Says the Gemara. If that's the pshat, let me ask a better question. The time according to you, why does it say that you have to wait until she finds out? And according to you, at least after 9 months, according to everybody, Manushach, he can give chalitza. And yet it doesn't say give chalitza after 9 months. It says wait until she verifies exactly what happened. Why did you do after 9 months? Must be another reason here altogether. You're right. Remove it altogether. They both say, Shema Yehi Vlad Ben Kim. What are we worried about here? Maybe there is an existing child. There will be a child. As old as a child, excuse me, there's no mitzvah yibum. The problem is she got chalitza. And the din is a chalitza, somebody chalitza with Rabbani cannot marry a kohen because it's like she's a divorcee. But it turned out to be that there was a child, so therefore she's not a chalitza at all. She's just a free woman. She could marry a kohen. And if she'll marry a kohen, people don't know, and they know that she's a chalutza, they're going to think that a chalutza is allowed to marry a kohen. And problems can arise. That is why we want to wait till everybody knows that there was a child. You're an announcement for Kohuna, what's the big deal? Make that announcement. Tell everybody that she's not there's no mitzvah yibum whatsoever. The chalitza wasn't infected. No, we're worried. There were people there that were there around when had chalitza happened, but they won't be around the second time when there's an announcement. So because mistakes come out, that's why. People will say, well, we know she's a chalutza. They didn't hear that there was a child and therefore they didn't need a chalitza. And then because she's a chalutza, the kohen, and the next day they see that she's marrying a kohen. They'll assume that a chalutza can't marry a kohen. Abaye comes along and says, I don't understand this whole raya here. Who's talking about chalitza? Does it say here that she should not proceed with chalitza, nor she should get married? No. All it says is she should not marry a brother-in-law. For others, it's a suffix, because it could be if there is a child and she's living with a brother-in-law in sin. Maybe taka like Rabbi Yochanan, that you could give chalitza. We're not talking about chalitza. Maybe you can give chalitza during the 9 months because you're allowed to give chalitza to Mubarak and you have nothing to lose. Says the Gemara, nevertheless, Tanya Kabas Rish Lakish, we actually have a brayso that learns clearly like Rish Lakish. It says there, better. If somebody gets chalitza to a pregnant woman, later on she miscarried, turned out to be that she's a Yevama, and the chalitza should have been effective. Yet it says, it requires another chalitza. Clearly that the chalitza was ineffective because at the time we didn't know whether chalitza is effective or not. And in order for chalitza to be effective, it has to be 100%. Generally, as a rule, we always paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. There are 3 exceptions. Hilchasa kavote the Reish Lakish bahani tlas. The halacha of Reish Lakish and the following 3 exceptions. Chod hoda amron. One case we just learned right now. Idach, another case. The Tnan we learned that if somebody wants to distribute his estate and he wants to give the inheritance as contrary to the laws of the Torah, it's a masna mashakos of the Torah. You cannot go against the laws of the Torah. Argues, he says you can change around. It says in Pasuk, the Torah gave you the right to decide what you want, except to take away the double portion from the B'chai where it says la yuchel levakid. Otherwise, you can do whatever you want. However, the Chum say that you cannot go against the faith. But what you could do is a thing known as a matnas body. That if you want to give a will and give your daughters equal amounts to your son and so on and so forth, there are different ways. One of the ways is called a matnas body. You give a gift. You gift them while you're still alive, and you can give whatever you want. So therefore, if somebody just gives nechasim, according to his wishes, he gave one child more than the other one. He gave the single amount, now double. His words are all right, provided he said it in a way of gifting. I call a matnas body, a matan of a healthy person. The Im Amar Mishum Yerusha, but he clearly writes a will, a last will and testament. He writes, this is how I want my inheritance to be divided, and he goes against the laws of the Torah. However, Kosam, if he inserted anywhere in the document, even if it's called a last will and testament, but if he inserted anywhere in the document that it's a gift, Bein B'tchila, Bein B'sayk, Bein B'emtz, if he inserted anywhere in that document that what he's doing, he is gifting, Mishum Matana, Dvar of Kayamin, his words will be carried through. Then we have an interesting argument. What happens? There were two children, and to one of them you say, I want you to inherit this and this field, which is not the way it should have been. And then to the other one, you say, I'm gifting to the other one. So Yechon says, as long as to one of the children you mention the word gift, they're all included, and therefore whatever you said, even though you did not use the word gift for the other children, it's a valid distribution. And Ishloki says, no. Only the child you mentioned gift to is a valid distribution, but not for the rest. He has to mention both by name. Yishu saw the plainis uplainis, and he has to also itemize and highlight what he is distributing. Then afterwards, if you write that you have to mention somewhere both children that both are being gifted. That's case number two. Now, Loch is like Rish Lakish. Case number three is the following: we have a big argument with Rish Lakish, we have a Gittin, and many places, and the machlekes is whether we say kinyan peides ki kinyan guftani or not. Do we say that if you only have the rights of use, does that give you ownership or not? In fact, the machlekes says, what is the definition of ownership, generally speaking? But apart from that, if I have the right, it's called ishtamshus or kinyan peides. I have the right to have all the dividends that come out of this. Does that mean I also have equity in the item itself? Or kinyan peides lavke kinyan do. If you have no equity in the item itself, all you have is the dividends, the usage of it, and that's it. And that's a machlek bin Rabbi Yochanan Shlokish. The Shlokish says that kinyan peides is not kinyan aguf. I only have the use of it. And we're going to talk about if you're selling these rights. Exactly how strong are these sales? And the Rabbi Yochanan holds kinyan peides kinyan guf from as if you own it. And this has many, many ramifications. And we're going to pass on like Shlokish. Says the Gemara. This is the case. HaKoisev called either Tanami learned. HaKoisev called Lechosel Lebnoi La'achamaise. A person said to his son, I'm giving you, while he was still alive, that I'm writing off all my assets to you. I'm gifting you all my assets, but I want a life tenancy. So I can remain in the house as long as I am alive, and I have kinyan peides, but you own the property. The father can't sell the property, he doesn't own it anymore. He gave it to his son, but neither the son cannot sell the property. Why not? The son cannot sell the property and expel his father. The father has total rights, and it says life tenancy until he dies. Okay, what happens if mochad of the father sold his rights that he has, the dividends and the usage of this property while the father's alive? It's a sale, because he owns those rights. He can sell that. Ad sheyamus who. That whoever buys it only has the right. He cannot be any stronger than the one who sold it, the vendor. So therefore, he has the rights on that property as long as the father's alive. What about mochad haben? If the son sold his rights to the property to somebody, unsold to somebody else, that person is no stronger than the son, which is he has to let the father live their life tenancy. Okay, fair enough. However, what happens, we learned, what happens, the son sold the property while the father was alive, but then the of the father outlived his son. The son died before the father. Now remember, the father has kinyan peides. Then the son died, but before the son died, he sold somebody else. What happens to that property? And then the father outlived the son. Does the property revert back to the father? Do we say because he has kinyan peides, is like a kinyan aguf, and it vanquishes the rights of the buyer, or do we say no? Kinyan peides lavka kinyan aguf. The father still owns his life tenancy, and as soon as the father dies, that purchaser who took over the son gets the property. So Rabbi Yochanan says, like Kanda Lekech. Rabbi Yisrael, what do you call it? Says that the Kech is not kind at all. That because the son only had the goof, and therefore, since the father, kinyan peides, the father had it, so that the son really didn't sell anything to the other person. But if the son outlived his father, why? Because then the condition was fulfilled. The father said clearly, you can have the property after I die. So therefore, but in the case where the son sold it and the father outlived him, the son didn't sell anything because the father owned the actual property. Kinyan peides, kinyan guf. However, the Shloki said the father only had the use of the property, not the actual property, and the essence of the property belonged to the son, so the son had what to sell. But the Shloki that the father actually owned the property itself, not to sell. And the Shloki says, why? Because kinyan peides lav ki kinyan haguf. The kinyan peides is not like kinyan haguf. Now, Luchei Tesis talks about another time talk about in Usha they made a special takana that we have in this same alloy, which the woman brings into the marriage. And these things, the property itself belongs to the woman. She leaves with these properties. However, while they're married, the husband, because he's going to work the properties, he gets the payments. He has a dividend from these properties. And what happens if the wife unsold the property to somebody else? When the wife dies, if the wife dies before the husband lives there, the husband can take the properties back. There was never a sale. So and made a special takana. According to Rabbi Yechon, there was no need to make a special takana. That's always the law. That if you sell the property, the husband had kinyan paydas, kinyan group, it was his. The wife couldn't really sell it. So this special takana must have been according to Rish Lakish, because Allah is like Rish Lakish. That's one way of looking at it. But another looking at it is that the case of a husband and wife is very different. The husband, the only reason why he has the paydas is because it's his wife, and the wife. Therefore, we want to please the husband, so that he should put the work into the property, and therefore, even Rabbi Yechanan would be made over there that that the wife's sale should be a real sale, because the husband doesn't really have anything. It's whatever he has. His kinyan paydas is a very weak kinyan paydas. It only comes from the same from her, and therefore we have to make a special takana. Anyway, to go further, what happens if Ein Havlat Shel Kayam, the child didn't live? So we said before, what happened if the child died? And let's say he had bia with her and lived, and the child obviously died. So there was a mitzvah of yibum. It says yekayim. We had a machlek Rabbi Yechon and Shlok is what yekayim means. Rabbi Yechon says continue because the bia during that period was a valid bia, and the Shlok means the yekayim. Go ahead and have bia again, and you can live together. However, there's an opinion that argues on Mishnah and says that no, you cannot live together. You actually have to divorce her because you did the wrong thing. Because the whole time there was a suffix, you didn't know how it's going to turn out. It could very well be you're living in sin. It could very well be that she is going to have a child and you had no right to live with her. So we're going to penalize you and force you to divorce. We learned that you have to actually give a get. We don't want you to remain together married. You have to give her a get. It's a knas because you took a chance. You risked. What's going on here? Amar Rabbi says, Rabbi, but Rabbi Lezer, I want you to know that Meir and Rabbi Lezer's idea that we penalize him, halachically it's all right, but when we penalize you for misbehaving, they both have the same idea. Where Rabbi Lezer, we just said, even up you could live with this woman, could turn out that she miscarried, but still we don't want you to. And what's the story of Meir? How do we learn? There's a takanas chacham, which is Yisa Adam Mu'uberes Chaveda. If a woman is pregnant, a person should not marry her because it's a danger. She's nursing because we need to give 2 years of birth. The child needs to be nursed, and you're going to make her cause her to lose the milk and endangering the child. So the Rabbanan, you're not allowed to marry such a woman. What happened in Nasa? You defied the words of Chacham and you married her. Not only do you have to divorce her, but we're going to penalize you. You can never marry. Even 10 years later, you can never marry again. Why? Because of Knas. It's exactly the same thing as Rabbi Lezer over here. These words are Rameh. The Chachamim say we agree that Yaitzi is not allowed to endanger the child, but Upshagi is money, the 2 years elapsed. You can go ahead and get married. If you want to marry, you can go ahead and get married. Yeah, Abaye said to Rav, I disagree. On both counts, I say that you have no similarity between the Meir and the Chachamim in our case. Let's start with the Chachamim. Abaye, the Mai, who told you that the same? You know why Rabbi Lezer says in our Mishnah why he thinks we should penalize you, because you went ahead and you risked an Isser in the Torah. Because it turned out to be that she had a child and she had no right to live with her brother-in-law, and you committed an Isser in the Torah of Chorus. Therefore, we penalize you for doing that, for taking that risk. Even though it turned out to be all right, but we're going to penalize you. Abel Hassam over there, the entire Isser of living with a woman who is nursing a child. Only the Rabbanon is maybe Kerabanos Filim, maybe everybody agrees, where it's only, maybe Rabbi Lezer will agree with the Rabbanon, that since it's only Yisrael Rabbanon, there's no reason to penalize you. It's not such a harsh Aveda, why should we penalize you? Or we can say the converse, just the opposite. Because it's not a harsh Aveda, we need to take extra measures to make sure that people treat it seriously. If it's an East in the Torah, we don't have to worry. Most people are not going to take that risk. Or Inami, Ad can come Rab Meir Hassan. No, why the Meir says over there, why the Meir says you have to penalize it because people don't take it seriously. Elam the Rabbana, the whole East is Rabbana, the Chachamim also chizuk l'divrem yaisim b'shulteira. And occasionally we have to take the drastic measures to make people treat it seriously. Otherwise, people don't treat it seriously. Over here in this case, say where you're risking Isa the Raisa with courage, most people are not going to take that risk with the Raisa. They finish Parshim, and most people are not going to take the risk and they won't do it. Amar Rava says, okay, after Abaye demonstrated that there's no necessary link between Rav Meir and Rabbi Elazar, come along Rava says, according to the word of Chachamim, beget, when they said for 2 years they should separate yourself from, in cases of a nursing woman, not only separate, but actually you should give her a divorce. They can I'll prove it to you. The Tani says, Yoitzi. The expression that Rabban Chama say that he should send her away for the 2 years, but like Tani Yafri, she should separate. Shmamana, that's a clear proof that what? That even the Chachamim, when they say you have to divorce for 2 years, and then you can take her back. Take her back. Today's an interesting discussion. What happens? Rabbi Yisrael Merliner says, what happens if somebody didn't marry a woman who was nursing but got her engaged, and therefore in this case maybe you don't need a get, you don't need to get at all, because anyway you're not allowed to live together. It's a sin. So that sin is going to keep you separate anyway. So there's no reason to give her a get. You just have to keep yourself separate, because it says that a kala, the loy bracha, is like you being boil and nida. So it's usher. So it's usher to live together anyway, because you didn't get married, you didn't consummate marriage. However, Tezes agrees, because he said that's an only Yisur Rabbanan, and Yisur Rabbanan maybe is not strong enough to prevent you. But the whole idea of marrying a nursing mother is Rabbanan. However, Yaakov Melanish or Yisur Melanish can say that the agrees in Yisur Rabbanan, and the Yisur Rabbanan of a Kala B'lei Bracha is far stricter than the Yisur. It's like Boila Nida is a far stricter of Rabbanan, and people therefore are more careful with that, and they're not going to live together. So therefore, it's all right. You don't have to give a get. And the advantage of that is, if it's a kohen, if you give a get, you cannot get back again together, as we'll see in a minute. Says the Gemara, over there. Let me ask you a question. Over there tonight, we learned over there, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, how do you determine if the child is going to survive or not survive? In fact, one of the reasons why we're opinion that men you wait 30 days is we want to make sure the child will survive. Interesting, when it comes to Bris Milah, we only wait 8 days to make sure that the child is going to survive. When it comes to Pinyan Ben, we wait 30. So the Mefoshim will explain, because Pinyan Ben is Dini Mamanus. And by Maman, we have a rule, Ein Holchim Maman Achar Roiv. When it comes to Dini Nefashis, we do after Roiv. And when it comes to Dini Maman, and this is one of the conundrums or perplexing things that faces a brother, comes as fake is to try to explain the difference. But when it comes to Dini Mamanus, we have a rule, an ironclad rule, Ein Holchim Maman Achar Roiv. It's not enough sufficient that most kids will live if they live more than 8 days. You have to wait the full 30 days. However, that's talking about where the mother didn't reach full pregnancy. The mother reached full pregnancy, if we know for a fact, for the full 9 months, then you don't have to wait 30 days technically, because we're definitely the child is going to live, even though the title Pearl says that it's always 30 days. So it says over there, so what happens if the child lives for 30 days? No problem, it's a surviving child. But what happens if, let's say, the child died sometime in between, but not through natural causes, because then it tells us it's an aphel. It died because it fell off the roof. It died because a lion devoured it. So in other words, we don't know what would have happened if it wouldn't have fallen off the roof. It might have lived. In fact, most children do live. So do we say in that case, because most children live, therefore it's as if it's not an aphel, or do we say that no, the fact is it didn't survive 30 days, it's an aphel. So this is called a suffix. Says Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, kosher shaba adam lamayain, that if the child survived 30 days and ain't an aphel, it's not considered an aphel. We say human because by an animal it's only 8 days. And the whole loisha, let's say for a side reason it didn't survive the 30 days, for example, it fell off a roof, then sveika it is a suffix, which means what? That if the mother cannot go ahead and marry a brother-in-law because we don't know, maybe there was a child. And the other hand, the mother cannot go free because maybe there was no child. So therefore you need chalitza but no yibum. The Itma we learn, but this again, talking about we're not sure if it completed the 9-month term of pregnancy. The Itma we learn, so what happens if the child died? If this is the only child and the child died, Reuben passed away and left behind a wife, and the child died after 2 weeks, within the 30 days, others even have a gissa on the 30 day, or within the 30 days, and on the Viniskacha, she went out thinking, look, I had a good child, and therefore I'm free, I'm not a Yavam, and she went to receive Kedushin from an outsider. What happens then? Ravina mashmei the Rav was an argument what the Rav said. Ravina said the name of the Rav. Amma said as follows: look, im Eishes Yisrael, if she happened to be the wife of Yisrael, which means if Yisrael divorces his wife, you can always take her back as long as she didn't marry somebody else. So the best thing is He chayletzes, let it, because of something we don't know, let her get a chalitza from her brother-in-law, and then she goes back to her husband, because maybe the child wouldn't have survived, and she has to live with her brother-in-law, so receive a chalitza, it's all good. The problem is if she's married to a kohen, and if we're going to force her to have a chalitza, she cannot go back to her husband. So you know what we're going to do? The image is kohen, it ain't a chalitzas. We're going to relax the law. We're going to say, you know what? We can rely on and we'll soon see who we rely on, but we can rely that the child would have survived, and therefore she's free and she can get married. That was Ravina's view of Rabba. Misharsha said the name of Rabba. I heard the name of the Rabba. That makes no difference. Even if she's the wife of Kohen, too bad. Since it's a suffix, it could very well be that the child would not have survived, and she has to live with her brother-in-law. She needs to receive a chalitza, and once she's a chalitza, she cannot go back to her husband. Cannot go back to her husband. Taisa already asked, why don't we just go after? We have a general who go after the Rav, and most children, will survive the 30 days. Why don't we just say we follow the Rav? So Taisa says, even though generally we follow the Rav, but where it is a miyut hamotzi, where the miyut is quite common. It's not a Rav, it's only miyut, but since it's quite common, and he gives two examples which is quite fascinating. One is if a person falls into the ocean, mayim she'ein lehem saf, you cannot see the other side, the woman is considered naguna. Why? Most people who drown, who fall in the middle of the ocean will drown. Nevertheless, there's a miyut hamotzi that can survive. That was one example Taisa gives. And another example is a geisa. Somebody's on the death throes, and Reiv geisa limisa. Still, the miyat is a miyat hamatzi here as well, and the woman is stuck. You can't say, "Oh, I saw your husband a geisa, therefore for sure he died by now and you're free." You don't say that. And then Taisa says maybe not. Maybe there because of the erba. Releasing a woman from a bond of marriage is stricter than other things. On the one hand, we say Mishumi Guni Kila Rabbanan. It's very interesting how we play the two rules. On the one hand, we say Mishumi Guni Kula Rabbanan. We try to be as lean as possible. On the other hand, Mishumi Erba Hechmira. We are machmer as much as possible. Anyway, by neful we are machmer. And says the Gemara. So we have a machlekes Ravina and Mashasha. Come along, Ravina says Mashasha. You should know. I remember Rabba said what you said. It makes no difference. That she has to get chalitza. Too bad she cannot go back to her husband. Too bad because there's something. Oh, but it's Safra. I want you to know the following morning, Rabba himself changed his mind, and we have a number of occasions in Shas, which is fascinating. Where Rabba said something, and then the next day he says, "No, what I told you yesterday was wrong, and I want to change my mind." That he was man enough to come along and say, "I want to change my mind." That Meshasha didn't believe him. Amalei Sharitu, you want to tell me that Rabba said that what? She live with her husband, the Kohen. Yeah, hey, Rabba, and tomorrow, and your will be the Tishra of Ta'ara. Based on your story, tomorrow you'll tell me that the fats, tray for fats is mutter, or Rabba says mutter also. It never happened. So my questions that follow, Rashi is leading to this question. Over here, in the case where he married this woman, a nursing mother, we said that they have to separate for 2 years, and we said that Yotzi have to give a divorce. What happens if the husband is a kohen? If he divorces, he can't get married. Are we going to be relaxed? Are we going to be lenient, at least according to Ravina that says, well, the husband's a kohen, we're going to say, you know what, don't divorce. So maybe we also will say, don't divorce, just separate, and then you can go back. Are we going to help out the kohen and say, don't divorce, just separate? Or no? Amalei, he answered back. So he told him, he said to Rashi, I don't see the comparison at all. When we are relaxed over there, we say that to the kohen, you know what? If she's a nursing mother, whatever it is, we're going to say you don't have to. In the case of the nafel, and we say that if the Yevama went out and married a kohen, we say don't get a chalitza. You know why we say that? Because not everyone agrees with Shimon Gamliel. Hachi hashta. What are you comparing to? Bishlema hasam over there. Kiva dikarabon the pligal Rashbag. Since there are the rabbanon who disagree with Rashbag, the Amri they say afagav the l'shah. They say that even if the child did not survive for 30 days, the lad ma'al yahav is still considered a valid child that she's exempt from yibum. Since we have such an authority, the rabbanon who say that even the child did not survive 30 days, we say the fact is there was a child, and therefore the woman's part of yibum. So the Shimon will say, look, in the case where the man as a kohen will allow you to rely on the chachamim and say that probably there's no mitzvah yibum, they can stay married. How the gabe is a kohen by a wife of a kohen. We have no breda. We will follow the rabban. But over here, you want to be lenient and say that what? That if he married a nursing mother, which he was told not to, and he went ahead and married because if he's a kohen, we'll just separate but not divorce because we want to help him out. On what basis? There's no such opinion. If you follow me, who's machmer, you can never get remarried. I don't care. Kohen Yisrael. The Ikar that say that after 2 years you can get remarried, but you still need to give a divorce. How many beget? They say that you need a divorce. Says the Gemara, eat what we learned. Teacher b'tei shloisha. We also know that because we learned before the laws of havchana, before the if a person divorced, whatever it is, you want to get remarried, you have to give yourself 3 months to know by a widow or divorcee to make sure the child is, whether the child is from the first husband or the second husband. Teacher b'tei shloisha, if you're mekadosh within the 3 months, which you shouldn't have. But then Ubarach, he fled. The question is, does she have to find him and receive a get or not? We actually put him in chayim. You defied the chachamim, so therefore we put you in chayim. The Chadam, another one says, Irukei mistaye. The fact that he fled proves us that you don't have to give a get. Why? Because you revealed to us that he only gave her a tentative kedushin, a kedushin that shouldn't take effect until after those 3 months. And since he fled, he said, as if I don't want to proceed. Havi Uvda was talking such an incident. His fleeing proves to us that it was never a kedushin in the first place. Everyone should have a good day. It's a good Yom Tov. It should all listen, and all that was brachas and havtachas should all be mekuyah and the taken from Yad Mamash.